We keep moving forward, opening new doors and doing new things because we're curious, and curiosity keeps leading us down new paths. Walt Disney said that, and if you're the same vintage as me, perhaps Sunday nights at 6:30 you would watch the Disneyland show, and I would sit on my father's knee and wonder if we were going to Fantasyland or I've forgotten what they were. Luckily, that's in the other bit of the recording. Today, we're exploring something that underpins so many pivotal moments in our life, but often gets mischaracterized as simply asking questions. We're talking about curiosity, not as a tactic, but as a mindset and a practice, a way of engaging with the world that shapes how we learn, lead, and create change. Often taking courage and confidence, but worth the investment. If we're not curious and we're not interested in others, then we can be missing out on so many opportunities. Our curiosity can drive us to try new things, see things differently, change our perspective. Joining me is someone who embodies that curiosity spirit deeply, Scott COO. With over 20 years of experience in management consulting, entrepreneurship, and leadership, Scott's journey includes ColourSpace Gallery, guiding transformation at Leadership Victoria, and serving as a judge at my business community events last year, where we talked about curiosity and why not. It's a privilege to have him here today. Hello, Scott.
Hello, Kerryn. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
It was great to meet you at a networking event early last year, and then be able to work with you for the awards dinner. And you're always in the back of my mind because I am a curious soul, and I think that, as I said before, the interest in others and the ability to think outside the box is something that we can all benefit from, especially in today's world where things are constantly changing. Scott, you've worn many hats as a consultant, founder, CEO, and COO, and across that arc, it seems like you've not stood still. What would you say has been what has driven this journey for you?
Well, I don't want to be sort of too twee and a bit sort of leading the witness a bit here, but yes, it definitely was curiosity. But let me bring a bit of nuance to that. I would say for a great part of my life, I was simply drawn to thinking about things a little bit differently. I was drawn towards new ideas, new ways of thinking, new ways of understanding. And then I think maybe just the makeup of who I am, I was also really interested in how it gets applied as well, how to shake ideas around. And so, for example, when I was a consultant, and I did a lot of work for the public sector as a consultant, it wasn't just, hey, come in here and this consultant is going to give us a report about something. It was forever thinking, okay, well, this is really interesting. What's the problem here? And then can I bring different ways to bear to address this problem? So, and wasn't change for the sake of change. It was, how do I solve this problem better in a way that's more meaningful or human-centered? And I realized a lot of what I was doing was drawing from a lot of different experiences. So I might look at a report, at a project report, and thinking, well, instead of me writing a 20-page update, which is what was being done at the time, could I put this onto a single page, focused around what are the key decisions that an executive team might need to make, right? And to do that, I was then bringing in my experiences when I learned photography, when I did web design, when I did all these different things, and I was jamming all of it together to create something that was meaningful. And that was a practice that I kind of carried out through a great deal of my life. But it wasn't until, well, the COVID lockdowns, when we all had time to sit and go, what on earth are we doing? Did I actually make the connection that what I was doing was this form of what I now call curiosity, or even applied curiosity, so to speak. That in many ways, what I was doing was just a way of asking questions and thinking about things in a way that's clearer, in a way that's different, and that allows me to see through different challenges in different ways. So that's the thing that's sort of driven me. And now, even if I don't have anybody that needs my help, I'm still attracted to things that introduce me to different ways of thinking, or learning about new things with a goal of deeply understanding something. And because if I do this well, not only do I scratch my own itch, but it means that when I do help other people, there's a greater map that I can bring and all these different perspectives and filters that we can apply to it. And that for me is what drives me.
Yes, I totally understand. I'm obviously operating this pod or hosting this podcast because I have this curiosity about why we're all so different. How one person can be in trades, someone can be a brain scientist, someone can have skills in architecture. How is it that we're all different? And by coming together, how much value and how much can we learn just by being curious and interested in what drives other people, and in so doing expand our own world and get us to challenge what we think is a normal or what could be improved upon. And so that's why it's part of me too, that I just really am fascinated and take on all those sparks of curiosity from other people and can sometimes apply it or transform it into another realm that can be of interest. And so my hope from our conversations on the podcast is for people perhaps to be pushed out of a comfort zone and think, well, what if I did such and such? Or maybe I should explore this. And I talk often about explore, excite, and expand. And it's only when we push ourselves into that sort of curiosity mindset and explore. I had coffee with someone this morning that I met on LinkedIn who's traveling for the last 10 months, and I was curious to understand more about them and what their drivers were. And you never know where those conversations are going to go. So the conversation that we had in the beginning was about the ColourSpace Gallery. And whilst we won't dwell too much about this, it feels like a really interesting project. And it certainly is a perspective shift in how people might consider artwork. Can you tell us a little bit about that project?
Absolutely. So in a nutshell, if I just describe what ColourSpace is first,
Mm-hmm.
I like to describe it as, when businesses or organizations or offices get new flowers delivered or fresh flowers delivered on a regular basis, or have their plants watered and changed on a regular basis. Well, ColourSpace does that, but with art. What if instead of having, a print, a generic IKEA print on the walls, what if we come in and change the art on a regular basis? Every 3 months we come through. And in this way, for a business, for people who work there, it's been in a space that is constantly shifting. Like we didn't evolve to live in a static environment, in a white box somewhere. We evolved to be in a more dynamic environment. And so this was a way of doing that. And so the flip side of it is that I don't actually own any artwork. We have such a wonderful community of local artists, and many of them are emerging artists. And I thought, well, one of their challenges was, how do they get their art seen? And their world is typically the gallery world, right? And of course, online as well. And I thought, what if I could blend the two together? What if I could take an office and rethink this as a gallery, right? A gallery where people get to work in. And in doing so, we can introduce new works from local artists into this space to increase their exposure and to facilitate that connection, that accessibility to art, that if people who are in an office don't have time to go to a gallery, they get to experience what it's like to sit with different art forms where they work. And in doing so, we're bringing in this dynamic layer that encourages maybe people to think a bit differently, that to see, to even be sparked by a piece of artwork that they don't like, to kind of go, this is challenging me. But that's
Yes.
interesting. That is the point. I joke.
I love it. It's
Yeah,
a bit like the Mona Gallery in Hobart, isn't it? Most people will come away squirming sometimes with some of those pieces of art, but it is a conversation and a thought starter. So you actually should live in my house, because I move our artwork and cushions around all the time to mix up the environment. And so I think in an office building, anything can do to spark curiosity and more conversation and bring new things into the space is really valuable. So I absolutely loved that when you told me about it.
Absolutely, thank you. And this is exactly it. Like I think these days, especially with this discussion of hybrid, of how do we get people back into the office, because there is value in that face-to-face connection. But we know now that it's not just come to work, but there's got to be a reason for people to come in. And so what ColourSpace does is to try and achieve some of that. Like we're not by any means saying put our artwork in and all of a sudden your business is going to 10x and take off, right?
Of
But
course.
we talk about this notion of the future of work being a bit more human-centered. And this is fundamentally what we're trying to do. It strikes me that art was grouped in the category that we call humanities. To be human, humanity, right? So this is what it's about. It's about creating and adding a human layer to it. And as a result, all those moments of wonderful serendipity that come, that's what we help trigger. And my favorite example from this is there was a client, a big technology partner that we worked with, and we brought our work through, and it was only a few pieces, right? 4 or 5 pieces in one of their main thoroughfares. And after about 3 or 4 rotations, because we change every quarter, we then learned that the staff had, off their own accord, decided to run a little competition where every time the art changed, people will come dressed like the artwork. And then they'd take photos, they share it around and be like, hey, look at this, we're dressed exactly like this artwork. And this is that moment of serendipity and connection that organizations love talking about, but it has to be organic. And so that's the idea. This is about creating the conditions in which people are empowered to display their creativity in all sorts of weird and wonderful ways. And those types of stories then connect and bond people in very natural ways. And so that was the idea with ColourSpace. And as a social enterprise, I'm really proud because the way we work is that we're a bit of an anti-gallery. So normally artists, they have to pay to exhibit. With what ColourSpace did, I wanted to, again, turn that on its head. What if we could pay artists to show their works? So 25% of all subscription goes to the artists and their works are displayed for sale. So this way, people can choose to buy the artwork too. So for an artist who doesn't know how to get out there, here's a place where you can earn some money by having your art exposed and on display. And then someone might come along and go, yep, I love this piece. I finally found what I'm looking for, because people usually don't know what they want until they see it. And snap decision, bang, the artwork's gone to a new home. So that's the fullness of ColourSpace.
Fantastic. I think you're definitely a disruptor, Scott, of the norm. And I think that is very, very healthy. You spent a significant chapter of time as CEO and COO of Leadership Victoria. And leadership, as we know, isn't always full of certainty, particularly in these times. Were there times you found yourself having to seriously debate your own assumptions about leadership, and how did you shape the way you now lead or how you now lead or collaborate?
I love this question, and you're 100% right. So my chapter into Leadership Victoria came again during the lockdowns, after the reflection of what am I really about? I've been a management consultant. I've now started ColourSpace, but what am I doing? And I realized a big part of what drives me, this idea of learning differently, it speaks towards the way we think, how we act, which essentially is about people development. It's about leadership. And so when this opportunity at Leadership Victoria popped up, I jumped and said, you know what? I think this is a sign from the universe. Let me go for it. Fortunately, I got into the organization, and then not long after that, I was asked to step up into the CEO roles. And just to be very clear, I was acting in the CEO role, but I was acting for more than half my time whilst I was at that organization. In terms of how it's challenged and shaped my leadership, well, one of the facets that I talk about these days with curiosity is it's also about how we see things, right? It's how we interpret things. And leadership is a really interesting area unto itself, because so many people want to achieve leadership. We often talk about leaders need to do this, leaders need to do that. This is what good leadership looks like. And this is what, leaders should be authentic, and leaders should be courageous, but leaders should also be vulnerable, and leaders also need to be decisive and inclusive, and this and this and this and this. There's so many things, there's so many expectations on leaders. And a lot of that comes through this notion of leadership. But at the end, I had this realization that at no point in my life, and I would suspect, and maybe even argue for many people, at no point when we're confronted with these challenges do we get on stage or get in front of people and just think, I'm going to leadership this really hard, right? I'm going to deploy my leadership skills. I've got my 2x2 model here of leadership. I'm going to do this right now. Instead, what we do is just go, look, I've got all these experiences. I've maybe got some practice and some ways of thinking that lets me try and take the temperature of the room, see what I can see, and then make a call. And then in the rearview mirror, maybe some people will go, that was a great act of leadership. And we don't know, right? In the short term, what might have seemed like a really good act of leadership may turn out to be a terrible leadership in the long term, and vice versa. And so these days, my evolution in thinking about leadership has been, what if we just don't even think about leadership at all? What if we just be people who are curious, who want to listen to others, who try to take the temperature and understand how to ask different questions to understand what the problem is, and then we make a call. And then we just don't worry too much about it. We'll let other people tell us whether or not that's good leadership or not. And in this, the hope is it takes the pressure off of what it means to be a leader. It's a bit Schrodinger, right? I think sometimes the greatest acts of leadership come when we're not thinking about trying to be leaders. And I think there's something in that, right? That I've started to call this the notion of peopleship. Just be good people, So that's kind of been my evolution in my leadership philosophy and what it means to be a leader these days, because I mean it's tough. I think so many expectations, so much weight on leaders that in and of itself can be so constraining. And it's little wonder that it's interesting that we talk about staff burnout, right, which is around, say, 50%, according to a study that I found. But when we look at the burnout of leaders, of the managers above that, 67%. So yes, it sucks that people are burning out, but the people who have to look after them are burning out even more. Right? And I know it's not a race to see who's burning out more, but it's an interesting bit of insight of going, oh, wow, these are just people like us. And yes, they might sit higher up on a management rung, but they're also just people.
Actually, I was just thinking that as you were speaking, because I think the management rung is one form of leader, but I also think you don't have to be on that management rung to be a good leader.
Precisely. I mean, I will, to talk about some of the stuff that we used to teach at Leadership Victoria, leadership is an activity, it's a behavior, it's not a title. But then I sometimes still have an issue with the word leadership, because just by definition, lead in front of, the act of being in front of somebody else, to lead somebody else. So already you're getting, as soon as we say leadership, let's also talk about followership then. Who are the people that is empowering leaders to do the thing? Because we've seen all these scenarios where a leader might be trying to do something, but then the people they work with are like, no, don't want to. You're not thinking about me enough. It's like, well, yeah, this is part of the dynamic, right? It's getting people to work together in order to progress something. That is the process of leadership, so to speak.
I suppose I digress slightly here, but do you think management leadership, they need to be technically strong as well, or people strong?
I think it's both. And maybe this is actually a really interesting segue into some of the the curiosity mindset type of things here, because one of the, you introduced that segment so well in terms of curiosity is not just about asking more questions, right? It's also, yes, it is about thinking outside the box, but these days I think that there's two components to it. It's, are we thinking clearly enough about what the actual box is before we make the change? And then it is the, how are we thinking about this, right? So therefore, to your point about the management versus the technical skills versus the people skills, I think it is important as a manager to understand the technical elements, because it fundamentally, if we're in an organization, if we're in a business, the technical bit is, how do we run a sustainable business? One that is sustainable in terms of growth and profit, because with that comes the ability to give more raises, to pay people better, to have a better quality of life for everyone. That's the mechanical part. And then the people part is the fact that, well, you need people to operate this machine. But we've, come across these scenarios before where you can have maybe a strong people leader, but if they don't know the mechanics, you might have a highly inspired and energized team doing the wrong thing. So it has to be, by definition, a bit of both, right? So for managers who are very good at being people-oriented, it could be that there is benefits to improving the clarity of what is this box? If we're going to innovate, what is the box first for us to innovate out of? And then for managers who are very technical, it's going, well, do we all interpret what we found in this box the same way? And how do we engage different perspectives to be able to look at this box in different ways? So it's very much like a yin yang these days for me. It's both things are equally important, and it's finding the cycle through of how we do this that allows progress to occur.
It's interesting. I actually just recorded a podcast too with Leanne Sheldon, and we were talking about AI. And of course, that puts a whole new uncertainty and certainty and questions for businesses and for their people about the future. And so I think, we have to be open to change and curious, and not set into anything so tightly, holding it so tightly that we don't allow room for new thinking and new interactions and new innovation, and be able to have a space where we can explore.
100%. But for me, what I think is really interesting here is the question, so what holds us to a system and a way of working, right? What contributes to this resistance to change, to doing things differently? And I think there's a very natural explanation for this, which is the whole notion of a business, right, is that we have identified a problem somewhere for a group of customers, and then when we deploy a solution, whether it's a product or a service, we think about how do we streamline that so that we deliver this solution in a repeatable way, so that when we solve the problem, we're making more money than we invested, and that's a business cycle, right? And so a big part of growing a sustainable business is about, well, let's figure out the problem, and then what is the solution we're putting in place that allows us to repeat it? So a business is predisposed towards repeatability. Any organization does this as well. For government organizations, right, it's we've identified this problem and we need to put together a solution that touches everybody. And the only way that's going to work is if that solution is consistently applicable, so we can roll it out to everybody. But that, of course, means it holds the process in place, right? Because we figured out what is the most efficient way of doing things. For ColourSpace, I spent a great deal of time not on the art side, but on the logistical side. How do I quickly go into an office, change the artwork in a way that means I can service more clients in a single day? And that led me to the invention of a thing that I call an art tote, which is a bubble wrap bag that I had to invent and create that meant I could change large artworks quickly. I created, well, I didn't create, but I helped design a platform, and a tech platform that allowed us to manage all these collections of artwork, and a click of a button generates a manifest that says, take these artworks from here to here to here to here to here. And so the system is established and it's efficient, and it means that I've lowered my cost, increases the margins. Brilliant. But what happens when a massive market disruption comes along, such as COVID? I'm a facility services business at a time when facilities are closed. Now what? So, I mean, in that case, we adjusted how we did pricing and all these types of things. And so we managed to weather that storm quite well. Although we took a revenue cut, but like we still managed it. But my point in sharing that is that a business is in some ways a set of experiments that's turned into a repeatable solution, and it works. That's the point.
Yes.
But it is the thing that can hold us back as well. And so now with AI coming along, it's like, oh, here's this big shiny thing, and it's going to change things. And so we have to adapt to that because the market's now changing. And so we now look at the system that worked before, and it worked maybe for some businesses for the past 20 years, we were able to do this well. But now the conditions for this business experiment has changed. So we have to change. We have to re-engineer the system now. And that's why we need to be open, to be able to think outside the box a bit, so that we know how to tinker. And it doesn't mean throw the baby out with the bathwater, but it's being really clear, right? How do we still solve this? Does this problem still exist for the customer? Number one. Number two, how are we doing it? And number three, how might we improve it?
Yes.
How are we thinking about it?
Yes. And my husband would say that it also comes back to, how does that engage your own team? How does that improve customer service? And how does it help stakeholders? Because all of those bodies have to come into any plan within a business too, to keep it profitable and operating well.
Absolutely.
So last year, Scott, at the awards dinner that you came and we had a conversation, and then you were a judge. That event is coming around again for the 8th year. And this year, the topic is why I stopped or why I started. If you were a speaker this year, or you could call it why I started and why I stopped, how would you respond to that theme?
This is a really great theme because it, in many ways, ties to that example that I just gave, right? Where when things are going well, when the system's working and the market's stable and I'm delivering things, right, there's no imperative to stop. There doesn't need to be. The business is going well. Why would we stop, right?
Yeah.
But I think this is where we start to type into different ideas and different observations. And it's like something's not feeling right. And perhaps sometimes it's because we're not clear on why it's not right. And as a business, it might be, I'm just seeing our savings go down a bit. It might be our margins are going down a little bit. It might be just it's costing more to get new clients. So why? Why is that the case? And so being clear about that is then realizing, oh, because I've been saying the wrong thing, I've not changed. And so I need to stop that, right? I think sometimes, that old story of working on the business or working in the business. Sometimes in the business, we're head down, we're doing this thing because it's always worked. And, it's still working because we still have customers. Why not? Why wouldn't we keep doing it? But there's this sense of like, hang on a minute, why am I getting more tired? Why am I feeling like more stressed and burnt out? It's not making sense. But it's what I do. It's what we do. We love what we do. And that's when it's being able to look up and go, hang on a minute. We wanted to get over here, but we're over here. And it feels like we're going in slightly different directions now. So maybe stopping is about going, okay, are we still actually going in the right direction? Because if we're following a path and then we're looking down and we realize we've gotten off this beaten path, that is draining in and of itself. And so stopping might just mean going, okay, I'm going to do the thing that's not bringing as much joy or energy or sustainability, and course correcting back towards something that is meaningful. And that's again where this practice, of curiosity comes in. It's the course correction. It's the compass, right? That allows us to kind of go, well, it's fine to take different pathways, but are we sure we're going in the right direction? And so for me, it's manifested in like even this work without curiosity. I realized there's a period of time where, I write fairly regularly on Substack. I have a newsletter called The Curiosity Mindset. And in there, I talk a lot about education, business, but it's very philosophical. And I realized I love writing a bit about these articles, but it takes a lot of time. It's like 4 or 5 hours each article. And I was like, but why am I doing this? And so I loved it, but I still was feeling drained by it. And it forced me to kind of just go, look, let me practice what I preach. Let me pause this. Let me stop this for a moment, look up, reorient myself to what it is I'm trying to achieve, and then I can start again. Right. And so that's how I would respond to that question.
Yes. Yeah. And it'll be really interesting to see what the speakers come up with this year. So just before we finish, because I know we could talk forever and a day, I'm always curious about people from all angles, not just the work life, whatever. And if you were at one of my events, it could be where we play the board games Conversations Count. And the card that you could draw asks you to share 3 hobbies you have or you had.
One hobby is or was cooking. I really love cooking. I love experimenting with new recipes, but I'm the type of cook. I'm at very big odds to my sister. She loves following a recipe. I like to do one recipe over and over and over and over again to really understand in depth what it's about. I wish I had more time for cooking. These days, I tend to cook a little bit less, but I love cooking and I really enjoy it. I get a lot of energy from prepping everything, cooking, like all that type of management, kitchen management. I love that kind of stuff. Another hobby is sailing. I did sailing for about 3 years as part of a crew on like a 45-foot Daler. And I'd never done sailing before, and I tried it out, and it has been really fun. I sailed around Hamilton Island as part of their sail week there, dodging whales and dolphins along the way. This, however, has been one of the things that I've stopped, to go back to your previous question, because I realized much as I enjoy it, it wasn't bringing me as much joy as I would like it to. And also because it needs a fair bit of commitment to make it work. And I'm just like, look, I like it, but maybe not right now. So rather than committing to everything again, it's going, well, what do I want to do? So what can I stop if it's not giving me that energy anymore? And then lastly, I had a hobby that I had for many years called Wushu, which is Chinese martial arts. So anyone who's aware of Jackie Chan, Jet Li, Shaolin monks, all that Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, I did that for about 13 years. And I loved it. It was a lifestyle. And I stopped because, well, I was getting a bit older. The community itself changed a little bit. But there's something there, the freedom of the movement was something that was very joyful to me. And every once in a while, I'll go back to one of the classes, pick up a few of the weapons, swinging them around, and just revel in the joy of moving the body. So those are some things that I would say are my hobbies. And actually, I'll finish. I do have fun writing. I am really enjoying writing at the moment.
Excellent. I love asking these questions at the end of the podcast because you really get a different insight into people, and it continues a conversation at a later date, and also an opportunity to connect someone with an article that might interest them, or somebody else that you know that shares the same hobby or interest. And I think it's a great way to create connection. So thank you, Scott, for sharing your insights, your stories, and you always leave me with more to think about. And curiosity, is is obviously we don't have all the answers, and we need to keep curious and to keep creating the conditions where we're willing to keep learning and to question what's fixed and embrace the change. How can people connect with you? What's the best way?
Absolutely. I was just going to say amen to what you just said. I think we very much share the same passion for what's important at the moment. In terms of connecting with me, people can find me on LinkedIn, of course. Just find me on Scott Co, K-O. You can check out my website, scottco.com. Currently, I actually am. I've got a couple of workshops that I do for different businesses and organizations. It's a bit of an insight breakthrough accelerator of sorts. And so for anyone who's feeling that bit of, I don't know what's happening, we're not thinking differently, I feel stuck, this is a short, sharp, like hour and a half workshop that's designed to just break through some of that and apply some of this curiosity. So those things that you can find on my website as well. And so if anybody, but beyond that, just feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or anything like that. Drop me a message there. Always happy to have a conversation. Always happy to help if I can. So that's the best way to find me.
Wonderful. And do you have a quote for us to end on?
Oh, you can't Google your way to wisdom. You have to remain curious. It's the only thing now in terms of the way of change. Sorry, this is going beyond the quote now, but like basically you can't Google your way to wisdom and you have to be curious. And I think that summarizes the challenge that we have right now. AI, you can Google as much as you can, go to all these webinars, but it's how we interact with it, right? That's what makes it real. It's what takes it from an idea to practice, to what is meaningful. How does it change our system? And that needs that bit of curiosity. So that's my quote.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Look forward to the next conversation.
Thank you so much, Kerryn. Thank you for having me.